sex feels like it's more accessible than ever. We are living in a time and age where it's easier to get access to porn. It's easier. We are having more interactions with sexually explicit content on through maybe IG models, or on TikTok. You have influencers like what's it called, the Bob House, and influencers like that. And what we're also seeing is now in traditional media as well, that line where before there used to be a very clear barrier between sexually explicit content and family friendly content in traditional media. That's also changing. A lot of the shows you watch that are watched by a lot of people who are also teenagers and those impressionable years have more sexual content, and or are surrounded around or are centered around sex and relationships and intimacy. I'm thinking about things like Love Island, shows that mostly more a lot of popular shows, Game of Thrones, etc. Whatever you may have, a lot of those shows have a lot of sexually explicit scenes, and with as much sexually explicit content is out there, being ingested by teens and young men, and that's who I really want to like focus on in this video, which is definitely thinking about how young men are impacted by seeing all of these different depictions of sex and relationships and intimacy and things like that. And I think that's something I would like to talk about, and I want to do that through the prism of Forever, which is a series on Netflix, and the three main male characters on there. First, we have Darius. Do you remember? Do you guys remember Riz? It was bro. That issue was 2 years ago. It feels so long ago. But the character of Darius and his mannerism and his characteristics, it reminded me a lot of that time, and I think a lot of this phenomenon especially in the streamer context, where there's always a certain point in a streamer or influencer's journey where they will lean a lot into relationship content. Maybe not relationship content with interacting a lot with a lot of girls. Maybe it's chats, it's having a lot of challenges, e-dates, and all of these things. And in this time, what you usually see in a lot of these influencer and streamers journey is that the content in this time, quite frankly, is very shallow. It is usually based on how pretty the girl is or her looks, and very rarely does it get more complex than that. And consciously or unconsciously, these creators create this culture where they objectify women, and you start to see that in how the chat interacts with them. It can get very vile, honestly, with a lot of the, what do you call it, the voice messages that they give, and some of the things which are asked of these girls, and it can get very, very toxic very quickly. And I think that this is something which a lot of streamers leverage this, especially in that journey to when they're getting bigger. This is a lot of times it's what grows their platforms a lot, because there's probably going to be a relationship that, or a breakup, or some situation that happens in this time, or clips and all of these different things. And I think the influence of that has also done a lot of harm in in the expectations of relationships, because a lot of the people who watch or a lot of people who watch streamers are usually what, 12 to 16 maybe, it's like religiously, and then you have that the early 20s group and stuff. So there's a lot of young impressionable minds who are probably experiencing these relationships voyeuristically, I hope that's a word, through these streamers. And there's a lot that can go wrong, and there's a lot that goes wrong. And a character like Darius feels and is a product of this culture. This very hyper-sexualized streaming content that pushes a lot of relationships, that pushes a lot of riz and things like that. that views women in this very one-dimensional way, that does nothing to that does nothing to push any concepts about commitment or anything like that. But the process is just like, talk to as many women as possible, talk to as many as you can, have as many sexual encounters as possible, have as many sexual experiences, and all of these things. And I think that a character like Darius in Forever kind of encapsulates that for this show, and you see that in how he views the other female characters, not just Keisha, but a lot of the other female characters as well. In that his goal is basically just like to have as much sex as possible, and that's literally all he does. And I think one of the things that he does as well is also how his value of them, his value especially of Keisha, diminishes based on the sex tape. When he initially starts to dissuade Justin from dating her because of that sex tape, and it's like his view of it is that this is a form of what? It's a form of weakness in a way. For him, that her value as a person boils down to the idea that she is sexually promiscuous or has had sexual experiences, and that is very destructive. Just quite fine, it's very destructive. And I think that the way that his view of Keisha, but also of women in general, is that like it does nothing to hold the incredible talents, the incredible achievements, the hard work that Keisha is putting in on track and in academics, her as a person. She's viewed she is such a complex character that is honestly very brilliant as a person and in what she's doing. And for him, he just views it in this one-dimensional way, and that is so diminishing. And I think that is a product of a lot of this streaming content and how it is portrayed and how it portrays not only women but a lot of the experiences and what it pushes. So I think that for me, Darius is a product of that culture that is built for a lot of young people and young men especially. And the second character we have is Christian. Obviously, the point of contention in this series is the sex tape between Keisha and Christian. But I think that if we look at a character like Christian and what he represents, to me, he represents the OnlyFans culture, or this bubble that we're experiencing. The reason why I say that Christian is an example of men in this OnlyFans space is because, for me, OnlyFans and this culture is inherently exploitative. The idea that, or what the advantage that people bring up in terms of it being able to be advantageous financially for women, or the fact that it has given out 6 billion in paid out to creators. Those stats are very, usually when you look at them deeply, they uncover a lot of what's really underneath is actually very stark, in that most of that money has gone to only 0.1% of creators, and only 10% of creators on OnlyFans earn maybe more than $700, and more than 50% don't even touch $100. And so you're seeing a culture which is built on this triangle system that brings up the illusion of financial security or financial independence, but that's only for a few. And that's literally just an example of a capitalistic environment. And so if people who push OnlyFans and things like that are really if they really desire gender equality and these very noble ideas that they are seemingly trying to accomplish through this system, why does it have to still exploit so many women in this place? Because one of the things that happens in this field is that for the 0.1%, cool, they're sorted for that, they have generation wealth. But for the other for the 99%, 0.999%, they're the ones who have to deal with the consequences of this system. They have to deal with the emotional toll, the physical trauma that their body experiences. And even for those people, even in the top 1%, I'm thinking about people like Bonnie Bloom and I forgot this other lady's name, but them having to go into these exploits of having to have sex with what, more than 100 and 1,000 men. That is not that if you are pushing women's rights and that is your main focus, there is no world that you can feasibly think that that is healthy for anyone, regardless of if they consent or not, because the harm that it happens to you, the harm that occurs to your body and to what you're experiencing, it is not that whatever money you would accumulate is not worth it. And I think that for how this connects for me, how it connects to a character like Christian is that, in as much as I love the show, it brilliantly describes that he didn't force Keisha to shoot the video. He didn't force Keisha to make the video with his phone. Everything was done from Keisha's phone. And when Keisha sent it to him, the reason why he sent it to another person was to prove them wrong over some generally a bullshit reason. And the reason, and even after the video came out, the person who experienced the most consequences was her. She was the person who shot the video, the person who did everything with autonomy. They're the one who experienced the most pushback, not the person who asked for it, but the person who had the most to lose was the one who was experienced the most. And I think that for someone like Christian too, and for him, one of the things that was interesting was that his life didn't change. His life still went on. He still got the endorsement deal. He was still a top player in the country. I don't know if they said if his like face was there, but like that was these things. This culture for me and OnlyFans as a concept, I just find it very exploitative, and I think that Christian, for me, just connects to that environment. I think it just connects to that culture that's happening right now. The trade-offs that occur in relationships when someone gives you consent, to do something, or and especially in this case where someone like Christian being the man who is a young man, being the man who asked for all of these things, who asked for the video, asked for all of that, for him to send the video, that says a lot about how much he values Keisha. Because deep down, your first priority should be always protect your lady or your girlfriend or your wife or whoever. And when you put something out like that, I think that it just says you're putting her in such a vulnerable position for a reason that honestly is so vile in and of itself. I think was so telling. And man, I think that this character, I love I love that this character was the most, let's be honest, I think this character was the most physically attractive. I love that this character was the most physically attractive. He was the most successful. He had the best prospects for the future. And I think that was a beautiful visual motif in terms of him being the shiny figure, but also him having the worst impact and the worst effect on Keisha as well. And I think that says a lot for systems like OnlyFans, systems like the porn industry and a lot of these systems which are built on the exploitation of women. I think that this is such a this is such a it's such a there's so many conversations that need to be had about these systems, and I think that a lot of them have to start from this idea that having a financial reward for something, it kind of diminishes any of the physical and psychological impacts that it has. And I think that, yeah, man, I have so many thoughts about this. But I think that I'll just end it here. But I think that I hate that because someone got paid or because someone receives a check that that we kind of can just look away when we're watching certain things or when certain things happen. Yeah. Yeah. Alright. So I got. Do you know something else? I want you to do research on the owners of OnlyFans. I think that one of the things that I also want to talk about is quickly, is that a lot of the owners of these companies in terms of Pornhub, of sex companies and a lot of these things, they all almost always they have just shady backgrounds. And whatever that looks like, they always have shady backgrounds. They always just have checkered past, and it just yeah, it's not a good system. It's genuinely not a good system. And I think that we need to start holding them more accountable for these systems. Yeah. Alright. Next character. Next character, number 3. Let's go. Alright, so lastly we have the third character, and that's Justin. This was the most interesting one to dissect and to see how it gives us actually one of the most powerful pieces of commentary is Justin as a character, because I think that for the show and as he's portrayed, he's the good guy. He's the guy who likes Keisha, goes to pick her up when she fights with her mom, goes on dates, does all of these little things. And so obviously obviously the show is about him and Keisha. But I thought one of the most interesting things that the show does, I think it might have been episode 6 or 7, but it's when they're at the pool. And it's the first time when low-key, not high-key, this guy, I think is when he tries to have sex with her without a condom, and it's whoa, that was a very eye-opening moment, I think, because for so long you kind of held on to the idea that, okay, this is the good guy, you don't expect him to do this or this or this or to act in a certain way. And for him to do that, it was kind of him as a character kind of gives insight into the good guys, which I think for a lot of people, and a lot of people probably even watching this would probably you relate to that guy, you relate to Justin, you relate to him more than the other guys. But I think that moment says a lot, because regardless of how you think of yourself, if you think of yourself as a good guy, or you Darius, or what's the guy's name, Christian, because you live on earth, you are constantly interacting with a system which is inherently patriarchal, and it gives you access to things, it shields you from things, it allows you to, it feeds you messages that push you to demand certain things. And I think that one of the most interesting ways that this show, I appreciate that this show did that for Justin, because it was real, because that moment when he was like, when he was about to have sex with that girl, it was like he wasn't thinking about this girl's gonna get pregnant. He wasn't thinking about any of that. And he wasn't thinking, even beyond that, he wasn't thinking about the fact that if she does get pregnant, she's the one who's going to have to bear the same the brunt of the consequences. She's not going to be able to train. She's not going to be able to, possibly she's going to lose the scholarship. She's going to have a whole entire child. And it's like the economic factors and everything. What's her name? Chelsea Fagan from the Financial Diet, she did this video called "Marrying the Wrong Man Will Be the Worst Financial Decision of Your Life." And in that video, she was like, if you marry a man who is a net, who's not even like, who's not, doesn't even have to be, who's just good at this moment in time, it's not worth it as a woman, because there's so much that is going on in the economy, socially. There's so much that takes place that there's so much against women. Like if they were to move into that, if they were to either becoming like pregnant or becoming married, there's so much that they have to take into account for, that as a man you never have to think about, because you are living in a patriarchal system. And I think that Justin as a character in this moment, kind of like, he portrayed that unspoken the unspoken benefits, the unspoken demands, that he is at his worst. He relied on his base feelings. He didn't think about Keisha. He wasn't thinking about what it could mean for her. He was just thinking about himself. And that was in of itself, it was a very selfish decision by him. And it was a very close, shout out to Lee, obviously not happened, but at least Keisha could have gotten off so much worse than if that would have gone on, honestly. If any of that would have happened. And he doesn't, and for him, honestly, another thing is that, like, he doesn't have to think about that. He doesn't have to think about the what if she gets pregnant, what if she gets a kid, what if she gets what if happens to her scholarship. He doesn't have to think about that. And that says a lot. That says a lot for a lot of good guys, because we all carry that. I hate that good guy thing, but just for the sake of this video, every man, every boy never has to think about that, and that is truly bad. It just sucks. So yeah, I think each of these male characters is very well written to portray a part of society as it's occurring right now, and each of them have flaws, and I think that genuinely impact the lives of the women in the show, but also in reality these also have real world consequences as well. So yeah, there's a lot that goes on to it. Yeah, so Justin as a character, I think he gives us that viewpoint, because I think that we always look at the extremes, but we never look at like the guy in the middle, who, and it's usually even his passivity, even if he's passive, because the system is built to be oppressive, it's always going to pull him to the other way. So if he's not actively fighting against it, it's always going to take him towards being naturally exploitative of the woman in his life, which I think it's actually very deep. It's actually very, very deep, honestly. It's really deep. So yeah, Justin. That's how I view Justin in this show, and as a way to look at it from kind of like a bird's eye view as well. And that's also another thing, is that these are the hardest actions to deal with the most, because they're not openly available. It's not a dire situation where you can see his mindset. It's not a Christian situation where you can see clearly. A lot of these situations are very inbred. It's inbred. They're a lot of internal. They are. It's based on these unconscious thoughts that are always activated in moments of when he's feeling, in the moment when he was vulnerable. He was he was he was at a moment where he didn't know what to do with his life, right? And so there's all these different things, and I think that's the scariest part, because you don't have a clear reference on how to deal with, because it's usually something that has to happen for you to see it. And I think that's why it requires, just also maybe I'm just gonna that's why it requires a lot of work, like especially people who, a lot of guys, like the fact that you don't openly like pursue any sexual relationships, or you haven't done anything bad to a woman or anything like that, or girl, it doesn't mean that you're not bad. Like, do you do if you look deeper into yourself, you are filled with so much mental and attitudes that you have ingested, that have seeped and kind of like um, been rooted in you, and it requires a lot of work for that to be uncovered, but also to be removed. It requires a lot of active work. You constantly having to rework your mind, keep putting yourself around positive female figures, like being honestly, even taking yourself out of certain spaces or certain situations. Like, but we're just speaking about like certain like streams, like certain streamers or certain YouTubers and things like that, certain music, bro. There's so much that it's so easy to fall into that mindset, and it requires you to constantly keep on fighting it, because if you don't fight, it's naturally designed for you to fall back into it. It's naturally designed for you to like, I think, because it's a patriarchal system, any the natural movement is to be exploited towards women, is to be discriminatory, and to create and to sustain the unequal power dynamics. And so you need to keep fighting. You just need to keep fighting. And it yeah, you need to keep fighting. I wanted to talk about like porn. I genuinely want to talk about porn. I don't know in this way, but just to like get into a bit, I think that is one of the, it's a struggle that a lot of men will deal with, and a lot of men go through. Shit, me too. I'm gonna end up first. That really, I think the impact that it has on our minds, bro. It is something that we constantly have to keep on fighting. I'm imagining like, shit. Okay, let's get into it, I guess. All right. So, for me personally, I would say that I've been struggling with porn for what, maybe let's say, this is what, 10 years of just constantly battling. Some years it would be like I wouldn't be battling. It was just like I wouldn't care about the impact, but that's 10 years of my mind being shaped to think about women in a certain way, and that stuff has so much impact that I probably will never know the impact that it has had on me, but it is something that it is very pervasive, where it is going to feel like it is not there, but the impact is there. And maybe it won't be in the big things, but in the small things, in the way that I interact with them and the way that I interact with certain people. I think yo, I have no idea where this is going. But the fact that it would be foolish for me to think that it has not had an impact. And it would be foolish for me to think that I can, me not watching porn is enough for me to not have oppressive thoughts or those bad thoughts towards women. They and so what I'm gonna start with myself, what I need to do is like, it's just constantly keep on fighting. It's just literally making sure that I'm obviously a Bible verse, but it's like renewing my mind every day. Genuinely just renewing my mind every day. I think that's the verse. I think that's Romans 12. I wish I can remember, but like presenting your body as a living and holy sacrifice, and allowing God to renew your mind. And that's a battle each day. That's a battle each and every day. It's the impact that porn has had. I'm gonna just speak myself again, on my life, bro. This is something that I'll probably live with for the rest of my life. And so I need to keep renewing my mind, because sin is so evil that like you can't wash it away. You can't wash it away. It's a very, 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 I think Jesus used a perfect analogy. It's about constantly dying to yourself and dying, like literally dying every day and carrying your cross. And I think that for me, before, as I end this video, which has gone out, here, let's continue, is carrying your cross and carrying your cross and renewing your mind and dying to yourself. These things these things are requirements, and I'm thinking about like the impact that my actions have made, bro. Like being on like porn sites, like I'm thinking about like, because this is a whole economy too, so it's like there's so much that we need to do to like, there's so much that we need to do just like to work against it. And man, I would just encourage like any young man or however old you are, you just keep on fighting. That's the one thing you can't do. Keep on fighting. Another verse, wretched man that I am. Wow, like that's that. Oh man, wretched man that I am. What? I forgot what the second part, but it's like the only hope we have is in Jesus. The only hope we have is in Jesus. That's literally the only hope that we have. Yeah. And bro, as men, bro, like we need to I don't know why I'm laughing, but because it just feels we need to protect women from us. That is, and I'm like thinking about myself, bro, like I need to protect I'm talking about like my sisters from me because of my actions, and I failed at that. And it's like, bro, what? And there's Jesus. Hey, Jesus, man, you just wow, damn. Okay, I think that's the video. That is definitely the video. I'm glad it went this way though. I'm very glad it went this way. I'm very glad like we got here. I have no idea how we got here, but we got here. And I'm glad that we did. If you take away one thing from this video, I think for me it's just to say that Jesus is a restorer. When he died on that cross for us, he saved us, and he saved us from not only the condemnation, but he also he allowed us to take off to put our flesh to death, that we don't have to follow it anymore. Now we can live in by the Spirit. And we're gonna go another verse now, because there's a verse in, I think it's Matthew 8. It's Matthew 8. Matthew 8, where, yeah, it's Matthew 8 or 7. I think it's 8. But Jesus, a leper comes to Jesus, and he just like lies on the ground, and he's like, Jesus, if you will, please may you make me clean. And I never understood the context of a leper, but a leper in that time, bro, like it was someone who was cast away. Like this was a person who was seen as the unclean of unclean. Like they were not allowed to be around people because they were seen as like disgusting, bro. And this leper came to Jesus, and he just kneeled, bro. He fell at his feet, and he couldn't. I'm probably sure he couldn't even look at him, bro. I'm sure he was crying, dog. And how Jesus' response to him is like, in the verse is like, he reached out his hand, he stretched out his hand, and he touched him, and he said, I will be clean. And I think, bro, like that image for me is something that that's what I want you to leave with, is wherever you are, if you are Darius, if you're Christian, if you are Justin, because every nigga is in one of these three places. Doesn't matter. Every is in one of these three places. So wherever you are, I promise you, Jesus is always there to just like, he's constantly stretching out his hand, constantly. And it's not because of anything that you can do. It's not because of anything that you can say. It's because he loves you. John 3:16. So yeah, that's what I leave you with. That's what I leave you with. Guys, I love you guys very much, and I will see you somewhere, somehow on one of these channels. I love you guys.